I want you to take this video very seriously. Usually, you get motivated after watching videos like this to become the next Bobby Fischer. But you get absolutely destroyed as usual. This video is different. If you are under 2000 ELO, that's because you still haven't reached your full potential of positional understanding. Let me explain. The foundation of a chess position is the pawn structure. Pawns are the soul of chess. But to build a strong pawn structure, first you need to understand how to place them without weakening the position in the opening. You need to understand how to place them in a way that makes it harder for them to get through in the middle game. And you need to have the ability to take advantage of pawns in the endgame. This is the way to become a strong player. And this is the main point of Caro-Kann defense. Instead of going for the aggressive attacks, we are trying to follow all the chess principles and be safe. Be simple. Simplicity is a strong thing in chess. The best example I can give you is the former world chess champion Mikhail Botvinnik, who's known as the Caro-Kann player. He didn't do any crazy sacrifices and mind-blowing tactics to become the world champion. His chess style was so simple. Anyone can understand his moves. But his defense was unbreakable. Even Mikhail Tal couldn't find a way to break through. So I'm going to teach you exactly how to use pawns in the opening, middle game, and end game. Also, I have prepared real game examples for you to understand it better. But I know it would be still harder when you are actually in the game. Which is why at the end of this video, I'm going to give you exercises you can do to improve your understanding of how to use pawns, so you can finally try something new to improve. The first game we have is a game of the rising star Gukish. His opponent is G. Fowler, who's over 60 years old, I think. And this was played in the World Rapid Team Championship 2023. E4, C6, D4, and D5. First two moves of Caro-Kann. Now you have to see how the position changed after the first two moves of the game. Before white played E4, that pawn was used to guard these two squares. After E4, these two squares are still defended. Now E-pawn controls these two squares, and queen and bishop control these diagonals. This is why E4 is the best first move. Now in this position, Fowler chooses to push, which is the advanced variation. Bishop F5, you need to get the bishop out before you close the diagonal with E6. And this bishop is controlling this diagonal. Here Fowler played C4, which is not a very common move in this position. The idea is to play C5 and close the center. And no one wants to take here because if black takes, that will just ruin the pawn structure. If white takes, this rook will get an open file, which is very useful in the Caro-Kann. So Gukish played E6 and now black has this unbreakable pyramid pawn structure. This is the whole point of Caro-Kann defense. Both players develop knights. Knight D7. And white closes the center with C5. Now black has a strong pawn structure, so then we should look for a way to ruin their pawn structure. Gukish plays B6 attacking that pawn. If white takes, this knight will get to control these squares. So white doesn't want to take, but also white doesn't want to ruin the pawn structure like this. So what should white do? Can you figure it out? Well, the best move for white is B4, defending this pawn one more time. So when black takes the pawn, white can take it back and still have this structure. As white, you need to do that calculation before you play C5. Then Gukish plays A5, threatening to win a pawn because white can't take it back. The rook is undefended. So Fowler played bishop E3, defending the rook. Now you can trade pawns like this, which is very common in this position. But also you can just leave it like this because if white takes, you can just take it back. That's what Gukish thought as well. So he played bishop back to G6, trying to put the knight here and pressure these pieces. White has two options here. The first option is to be aggressive and go for an attack with a move like H4, looking to trap the bishop like this. So black will be forced to play H6 or H5. Option 2 is just to develop pieces and improve the position because those pieces are yet to develop. What white shouldn't do here is play F4, and that's exactly what he played. It doesn't do anything. Gukish just played knight F5 as he was going to. And what is this for? That move just created a big weakness, and that pawn is going to be a target soon. If you try to keep defending that pawn, you are just creating more weaknesses. F4 is a good example of a bad pawn move. Then Fowler played bishop f2, getting the bishop out of danger. If you haven't forgotten already, we were trying to find a way to ruin White's pawn structure. Here Gukish has a brilliant move to do it. Unfortunately, he didn't play that move. He changed his mind, maybe he wasn't sure. But he saw that move. The move is knight takes d4, sacrificing the knight to destroy the White's pawn structure. This is why he wanted that knight there. After the bishop takes, we trade pawns and we get another pawn. So we are sacrificing a knight for 2 pawns. And now Black got 2 passed pawns ready to run down the board. White pieces are still undeveloped and useless. At the Grandmaster level, White is cooked here. But this didn't happen in the game. If this happened, this game would have been really famous. Gukish played h5, trying to create an attack on the king side, which is also enough. Fowler played bishop e2, and finally, Gukish decided to take the c-pawn. He didn't take the b-pawn because he wanted to keep the rook and control the b-file. Because since the king isn't castled, you need to make sure you are controlling both sides. Bishop e7, trying to get more pieces to the attack. And bishop d3 by Fowler pressuring the knight. Gukish played bishop h5, pinning the knight to the queen, literally asking Fowler to take this knight. Because it's really hard to tell what else he could have done. Even though he got a strong position, it's a bit harder to make progress. Also, he calculated after g6 and knight e6, the position has improved a lot. Now he has targets and open diagonals. Fowler played bishop e3, just defending pawns. That's how you know you are losing. Gukish castled, which means he is going to push this pawn and open up this file. By the way, if White takes with this pawn, it's even worse. Because Black gets a passed pawn. Bishop has to go back. Queen can't take, there's a fork. So Fowler took with the f-pawn. After a few more moves, Gukish brought his pieces to the attack and the game was over. Rook f2 wins the queen, but Gukish plays rook f7 very calmly and Fowler resigns. He would have resigned like 10 moves ago to be fair. This game is a good example of how to use pawns in the opening and middle game. Second game I have for you is a game of the Caro-Kann player Mikhail Botvinnik. His opponent is Smyslov, more like SMY slow. And this was played in 1958 World Championship. This game is a great example of a middle game. Look how Botvinnik handled this middle game very calmly without any chaos. White starts with 2 knights. Botvinnik takes his bishop out before creating the triangle pawn structure. Then he trades that light square bishop for the knight. Because their light square bishop is going to be useless because of Black's pawn structure. That's a common thing in Caro-Kann. Now the best move or Black is e6, creating the pyramid. But Botvinnik developed his knight first, which is confusing for me. Looks like Botvinnik wants him to push the pawn and close the center like this. But if Smyslov decides to push it more, this isn't going to be the best position for Black. But anyway, Smyslov didn't push. So Botvinnik played e6 and White played bishop e2 here, which is not the best move. White should play bishop d2 and go for an attack like this. You can't play slow and give time to Botvinnik. But that's exactly what he does. So Botvinnik gets to do everything he wants. Anyway, knight d7 and queen g3 pressuring this pawn. So Black has to play g6 before moving the bishop. But this is okay for Black. Bishop f4, trying to play the very annoying move bishop d6. Botvinnik plays queen b6, threatening to take this pawn, so White defends with the rook. Black castles. And after the opening, Black has a great pawn structure. In the middle game, we need to break their pawn structure while we still have a good one. Bishop c7 attacking the queen. Queen d4, bishop f3, and Botvinnik played e5 here, blocking the bishop. Bishop d6 attacking the rook. Rook develops. Bishop a3 and Botvinnik decide to take on d4. Now the d-file is open. As you can see, White pieces are very passive. They are not doing anything. So then Botvinnik played b5, looking to fork 2 pieces. White attacks the queen. Botvinnik plays queen b6 and b3, creating an escape square for the bishop. Now you can't fork because knight a4 attacks the queen. Knight c5, looking to put the knight here and control these squares. Botvinnik isn't planning a crazy attack on the king. He is just slowly improving the position without taking risks. I think he's respecting the name of his opponent. This is why he is the most principled player when it comes to chess. Bishop c1, Queen c7 and knight e6 as planned. a4 and a6. Then white played a very unnecessary move b4. Now white can't control this square with a pawn. So if black can get a knight to that square, that's going to be really annoying for white. Because black can control lots of important squares on the white side. Simslav isn't playing the best game. In the other hand, Botvinnik is taking full advantage of Simslav's mistakes. This is what you need to do in the middle game as well. Bishop e2, queen e7. It looks like white can take a pawn, but after the queen take, black has knight h5 discover attack on the queen and white loses the knight. Here white took the b-pawn, which is a mistake. He had to play a5 taking the square, so black can't bring his knight easily. Now black pawns are controlling lots of space on the white side. White trades rooks. Bishop b6 attacking the rook and rook moves to a8. Here white plays the worst move of the game. This is an example for a very bad pawn move. f3. Now this diagonal is open. This bishop is blocked and it's useless. So this knight can get in. Rook a3 is coming. If the knight moves, you can take a free pawn because this pawn is pinned to the queen. Basically, the move f3 weakens the entire white position. If you play f3 in this position, you are supposed to bang your head on the wall and resign. I don't know what this guy was thinking. So Botvinnik plays rook a3, white defends with the queen. Bishop h6 controlling this diagonal. Bishop f1 was played, white was running out of moves. Knight d4 blocking the bishop, looking to bring this bishop here to the attack. If the bishop takes the knight, that would be just suicide. Instead, white attacks the queen moves. Bishop d3 making sure that rook doesn't come in. But here, white takes this knight and just like I told you, it's suicide. Bishop comes in, knight e5. I guess he was thinking of taking this bishop, but knight f6 was the best move. White attacks the knight and Botvinnik takes the bishop. White tries to keep the position still somehow. But look how slowly Botvinnik just broke his defense one by one. He is not in a hurry. He is playing the most principled way possible. After a few moves, Simslav understood this is just a waste of time. He is going to lose this game anyway. So he resigned in this position. The third game was also a game of Botvinnik in the same championship. Against the same opponent, of course. Smyslov. Hopefully this time he will do a better job. This game is mostly about the endgame. Watch how Botvinnik converts this into a winning endgame. In this game, Botvinnik decided to take the e-pawn and open up this diagonal early. Then he developed the light square bishop. White moves the knight back attacking the bishop and Botvinnik moves the bishop back. Don't bring the bishop here because you want to play e6 to build the pawn structure. Smyslov pushes the h-pawn trying to attack the bishop. So Botvinnik creates an escape square for the bishop. Then Simslav played bishop d3. Players traded bishops. But usually in this position white plays h5 forcing to move the bishop back. And then white plays bishop d3, making black move the bishop multiple times. Again, not the best performance from Smyslov. Bro hasn't learned his lesson yet. Anyway, queen c7, preventing the move bishop f4. So white plays bishop d2 and castles long. Black also castles queenside because otherwise black is going to get absolutely crushed. Botvinnik isn't going to invite that. Then here Botvinnik decides to play an aggressive move. c4. Not the most principled move, but it threatens lots of things. Takes and s6. Another weakening pawn move just to prevent knight b5. Don't play like that because you are not Botvinnik. Queen e2 making sure the knight never gets pinned. Bishop d6 and knight e4. Attacking the bishop right away. Players trade knights, Botvinnik kicks out the queen and then he plays rook d7 looking to double rooks. Smyslov played rook c1 looking to push this pawn and open up the diagonal to attack the black king. So if we just take a good look at this position, the material is equal but black has a better pawn structure. But black has a weak king. The white king is super safe. So what I think is, Smyslov has to take full advantage of the black king being weak. He needs to go for a quick attack. That's how he wins. But as black, you just have to make sure you don't get checkmated and you are going to an endgame. So Botvinnik plays queen c5 to stop Smyslov from pushing the pawn. Smyslov attacks the queen with the knight. Botvinnik gives a check. Smyslov blocks with the rook so he can double rooks. Here Botvinnik plays bishop c7 and allows Smyslov to push the pawn. Not sure why, maybe he didn't like the fact that he has to use all of his pieces just to stop the pawn. Then he will have to keep playing defense. And Engine agrees with Botvinnik. It's actually the best move. So Smyslov pushes the pawn, continuing with his plan. Here best plan for Botvinnik is to play queen d3 and try to trade queens so you can go to an endgame without getting checkmated. Instead, he plays rook d5 and Smyslov pushes the pawn. Botvinnik can't take the pawn because the white queen can take this pawn with a check and he is going to lose everything. So Botvinnik plays bishop b6. Now white needs to double rooks and go for the attack without giving Botvinnik any time. Instead, he plays knight d2 and this is slow. Just like his name. He's giving time to Botvinnik. And Botvinnik offers a queen trade immediately. Knight c4 attacking the bishop and Botvinnik moves it back. Then Smyslov trade queens. I don't think white needed a queen trade. But don't worry, that won't be the worst move. Smyslov here played knight e5 which is a blunder. Can you see why it's a blunder? The position was equal here and Smyslov was supposed to continue with his plan like this. But he missed a 1000 ELO beginner tactic. So Botvinnik took the bishop and after rook takes, he took the knight as well. He got 2 pieces for a rook. It's a huge advantage, especially in the endgame. Then Botvinnik offers a rook trade and Smyslov has to take it. Otherwise it's going to get even worse. Now we are in the endgame. Knight d5, king c2, h5 stopping white from advancing. Then Botvinnik starts to create weaknesses. How can you create weaknesses? By forcing them to push pawns. Now he is pressuring this weak pawn and this rook has to defend. Then he takes his knight to attack pawns. So Smyslov has to push them. Now black attacks this 2 times so Smyslov has to push. He attacks again. White has to push again. And now this is a big weakness. White can't protect it, also white can't push it. Smyslov attacks the bishop. Botvinnik attacks the pawn. Rook moves to the 8th rank trying to target black pawns. But black can defend them easily. But instead of taking this pawn, Botvinnik played bishop f2 which is great because now white can't even threaten to take a pawn. If white push, you just take and make a queen. If this, just knight d6. So Smyslov pushes this pawn looking to create a passed pawn. Botvinnik attacked the rook before takes. Bishop takes the pawn and Smyslov pushes the pawn, the last hope. But there's no way he's gonna make a queen. But as black you have to be careful here. It's never too late to blunder the game. You can either give away your bishop to the pawn and push your pawn slowly to make a queen which is unstoppable. That's the easiest way to win. Botvinnik should have done it. Or you can give checks and bring your knight to stop the pawn like this. Which is the hard way. This rook has no moves. Then Botvinnik created a passed pawn so white king has to stop it. Then he gives away his bishop to remove the rook and the pawn. Which is the same thing I showed you before. This is a complicated version of it. Knight check and Smyslov resigned. Because the king can't go there, if he attacks the knight, the king defends. Now let's go to the exercise part so you can start improving in chess. First exercise I'm going to give you will minimize your blunders, mistakes, and inaccuracies. Start doing this from today. Here it is. Always look at all the squares you are controlling. Also, look at the squares your opponent controlling. This might not sound like anything special. But if you can do this from the first move to the last move of the game, you will be surprised how much better you have gotten already. Don't be in a hurry to play any move. Always do this before playing any move. Okay, now let's go to the second exercise. I already taught you what happens when you push a pawn. New diagonals get opened. If you are not careful, it's going to create lots of weaknesses. So the second exercise is, you have to create a good pawn structure without creating weaknesses. I'm not telling you to come up with something on your own. You can play Caro-Kann and create this pawn structure without creating weaknesses. Let me show you what I mean. First of all, don't give them any chances to ruin your pawn structure. And the second thing is, in this position if you push this pawn, this diagonal opens up. So whites will try to put pressure and take advantage. So before you push this pawn, you need to calculate how to deal with that. For example, you can play h6 to stop that, or you can just play bishop e7. Here's another position from a game. Here you have to push this pawn before moving the bishop. So does that pawn move weaken the position? Definitely yes. So you have to calculate how to deal with that before you move it. Since this diagonal is open now, you have to put your bishop here and control it. So this pawn move won't be a weakness until you lose this bishop while they still have theirs. Now you have created a strong pawn structure without any weaknesses. And here's a very common Caro-Kann position. This diagonal opens up early, so they start giving checks and putting more pressure. So you need to calculate how to deal with that. And remember, you only have to take care of this diagonal until you castle. So make sure you can take care of it until then. So you have created a strong pawn structure without weakening the position. Try to do this in every single game. This is your plan in the opening. After you have mastered the exercise 2, you can start exercise 3. In the middle game, look for a way to ruin their structure and create weaknesses. Look for a way to win material. Not by a lot. Just try to be a pawn. You can turn it into a big advantage later. If you manage to do that thing, you will go into a winning endgame. You will fail to do this, it will be hard. But keep trying until you can do it. Once you think you got it, focus on exercise 4. In the endgame, if you are up material, create a passed pawn, trade queens, and make a new one. Trade pieces until they don't have enough material to stop the passed pawn. After those trades, bring your king to the middle as well. Don't let them get close to the passed pawn. Cut off the king's path. They will have to give up material if they want to stop the pawn. This is just an example plan for an endgame if you are up material. Let's say you are a knight up. Then all you have to do is trade all other pieces. You will end up with a knight. Then bring your king to the middle and eat their pawns. And simply push your passed pawns to create a queen. Work on these plans, you will be really strong in no time. I hope this video was useful. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you want to learn a different chess style you didn't know, watch this video.